This is Sarit. Welcome back to another video on decision making. This video will clarify what cognitive bias is and share two most important common cognitive biases that can significantly impact your decisions and judgment. By knowing how these biases manifest, you will be able to ensure that the decisions you make are sound and reliable. Let's kick off with a quote. Expertise is about learning new ways to notice. What is cognitive bias? A cognitive bias is a systematic error in thinking when making decisions. The errors are not accidental but systematic, and you are unaware of them. Given the number of decisions we have to make on a day, the brain must use shortcuts to assess different choices. You can't do an exhaustive cost-benefit analysis to decide which butter to buy or what kind of pizza to order. Research suggests that we develop unconscious routines to cope with the complexity of decisions. As a result, we use mental shortcuts. For example, while crossing a traffic intersection with yellow light, you use mental shortcuts to assess the situation without going through an exhaustive analysis. Or, how do you judge the distance between you and the car behind you while looking in the rearview mirror? You use mental shortcuts. You think the distance by viewing how clearly you can see the car. The clearer the car appears, the closer it must be, right? The fuzzier it appears, further it must be. However, mental shortcuts are not foolproof. You could easily make a mistake on a cloudy day. However, if airline pilots take the same shortcuts, the results could be catastrophic. I must say that no discussion is complete without mentioning the Nobel Prize laureate Daniel Kahneman, whose path-breaking research has provided the foundation of our current understanding of decision-making. You can read his book if you are interested, called Thinking Fast and Slow. According to Daniel Kahneman, these mental shortcuts are called heuristic. However, I will use the word mental shortcuts for simplicity. Shortcuts are simplifications we use to avoid analytical thinking and logical reasoning for simple judgment calls. However, they can lead people to make hasty, sometimes incorrect decisions about more complicated issues. The example of judging the distance between two cars is a decision of sensory perception. However, there are other flaws in the way we think, and they take the form of biases. Researchers have identified many flaws in how we think. These thinking flaws are called cognitive biases. Cognitive biases are irrational anomalies in our thinking that are hardwired into our thinking process. We cannot recognize them even when we are falling right into them. What makes these traps so dangerous is their invisibility. It is nearly impossible to get rid of these biases completely. But when you understand these biases better, you will be able to offset their adverse effects. Now is a good time to talk about two most common cognitive biases. Anchoring bias. When deciding, our mind gives enormous weight to the first piece of information it receives. This information could be from initial impressions, ideas, the data you collect, prices, opinions, etc. It anchors the subsequent thoughts on the first piece of information. Marketers and salespeople are known to use these techniques to influence our decisions. Hypothetically speaking, let's assume you are an art lover and you go to your favorite art dealer to buy a painting for your newly renovated home office. You like a painting, though the artist is unknown. There is no price tag. You have no idea about the price but the painting makes an emotional connection with you, the way the artist has used the different brush strokes. Now you estimate the cost in your mind and think it should not be more than $500. However, the dealer suggests a price of $3,500. Whether you realize it or not, the opening price will subconsciously act as an anchor in your mind that would automatically swing your estimate upwards. You could pay much more because the dealer's opening price will influence the final judgment. Your best defense is your awareness. I want to repeat, your best defense is your awareness. Now that you are aware of how anchoring bias shows up, what can you do to offset its effects? The anchoring bias impacts the mind of everyone, including everyday buyers, doctors, lawyers, students, parents, and the list goes on and on and on. It is so widespread that you can't escape, but you can do something about it. Please hit the like button if you find value in this video. Okay, what can you do to reduce the impact of anchoring bias? Number one, view the decision from a different perspective. Don't just stick to the first line of thought. One very effective way to reduce the grip of anchoring bias is by thinking of the opposites. Because we naturally seek self-confirming information. We need the discipline to consider the opposites by asking why this option is the best choice. Force yourself to feel the opposite of your instincts. This would create disruption and unhinge the anchor. Number two, before discussing the problem with anyone else, think in isolation to avoid getting anchored by another people's ideas. Also remember not to anchor other people from whom you are seeking advice. Don't influence or anchor their thoughts. You are a prime target of anchoring bias in negotiation situations. Here is another example of cognitive bias called as framing bias or framing effect or framing trap. We have all heard the famous joke when a man asked the priest, "Can I smoke while praying?" The priest replied, "No." "How can you do that?" The man, a chain smoker and a religious person, felt a little dejected. He approached another priest and asked, "May I pray while smoking?" The priest said, "Of course, you can pray anytime." The joke clearly shows that the way you ask the question can influence the answer. This is also relevant in decision making, and the outcomes are dependent on how you frame the problem. So, what can you do about it? Number one, remind yourself of your fundamental objective in solving the problem. Number two, don't accept the initial frame. Look for distortions caused by the frame. Number three, before making the decision, particularly towards the end, ask yourself how your decision would change if the frame changed. If you are a manager, pay attention to how your direct reports frame the problem. Challenge them by changing the frames. So in summary, cognitive biases are irrational anomalies that are hardwired into our thinking process. We don't recognize them even when we are falling right into them. It is nearly impossible to get rid of these biases because they are hardwired. What makes these traps so dangerous is their invisibility, but you can certainly do something to offset their adverse effects by raising your awareness. Then we discussed the two most common types of cognitive biases, anchoring bias and framing bias. Anchoring bias is how the first piece of information influences your decision-making thoughts. Remember the art store hypothetical example? And then we spoke about the framing bias. If you frame the problem differently, you will likely get a different outcome. To help you remember, I shared the joke about the smoker and the priest. Most of the research on decision making comes from academic sources. However, I attempt to convey this information informally and conversationally. I hope I was able to enrich your vocabulary of decisions and judgments. Thank you so much for your attention and the opportunity to serve you. If you found value in this video, please consider subscribing to my channel, hit the like button and the bell icon. Bye for now and have an awesome day.